It started with a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not my partner's, not my stepbrother's. When I opened it, Julian stood there. He wore a black hoodie, half-zipped, his eyes flicking up and down like I was already a secret he'd been told not to keep. "Hey," he said, voice smooth like melted sugar. "I'm here with Cole. You're Damian, right?" I nodded. "Yeah. Come in." He stepped inside. His cologne hit first, something woody, masculine, designed to linger. Julian was Cole's best friend, visiting for the long weekend. I'd heard his name once or twice, never thought much of it. But standing there in the low light of our hallway, I understood immediately why Cole had always been vague about him. He was dangerous. My partner, Alex, was upstairs, probably in the office, headphones on, drowning in deadlines. That's what our evenings had turned into lately. 2 bodies under the same roof, passing like shadows. We'd been together 6 years. Stable. Safe. Loveless. Dinner was a quiet affair. Alex made his usual, grilled chicken, overcooked broccoli. I set the table. Cole showed up half an hour late, laughing, dropping his bag in the hallway like a teenager. Julian trailed behind, hands in his pockets, eyes soaking in every detail. At the table, Cole talked. He always did. Stories from college, some half-funny memory about a camping trip. Alex gave polite smiles. I stayed quiet, sipping my wine, aware of the way Julian's leg brushed mine once, twice, then lingered. I didn't move. Neither did he. "So," Julian said, cutting through Cole's rambling, "what do you do, Damian?" "I manage a gallery downtown," I answered. "Art guy," he said, smirking. "Figures. Figures. You've got that whole, sensitive, repressed thing going on." I laughed, unsure if it was an insult or flirtation. Maybe both. He held my gaze just a second too long. Later, Cole and Alex played some console game in the living room. I offered to make drinks. Julian followed me to the kitchen. "You always this quiet?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Only when I'm trying not to say the wrong thing." He tilted his head. "And what would the wrong thing be?" "That I noticed the way you looked at me." He grinned. "No shame. No hesitation. Good. I was hoping you'd notice." We stood there, barely 3 feet apart. The hum of the fridge. The soft clicking from the game in the other room. The warmth of his eyes on mine, full of suggestion. I cleared my throat. "You shouldn't flirt with someone who's taken. Doesn't look like you're very taken to me." That one hit hard. And it was the truth I'd stopped admitting even to myself. Alex and I hadn't touched each other in weeks. Months, maybe. Conversations were transactional. Sex had become a memory, a task that eventually fell off the calendar entirely. And here was this man, sharp, bold, breathtaking, seeing right through me. I handed him a drink. His fingers grazed mine. "Thanks, husband," he said softly, amused by my gold band. "I'm not married," I replied. "Still," he said, eyes flicking to my ring, "you wear it like it's a cage." Later that night, I lay beside Alex in silence. He was on his side, back turned, phone screen casting pale light onto the sheet. I listened to the occasional chuckle from the guest room where Cole and Julian stayed. Then nothing. Just silence. I turned to face the ceiling. My thoughts ran in loop. Julian wasn't just flirting. He was inviting, testing, hunting, and I was already leaning toward the fall. The next morning, I found him outside, barefoot, coffee in hand. The sky was gray, fog clinging to the edges of the yard. He looked at me like I was the weather, something he wanted to wrap himself in. "You sleep okay?" he asked. "Barely," I replied. "Me neither." A beat passed. No one else was awake. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel it," he said. "What?" "That thing. Between us." I swallowed. "It was nothing." "No," he said. "Your silence was something. The way you didn't pull your leg back. That was something. The way you looked at me when I called you husband? That was everything." I should have walked away. Should have told him to stop. But I didn't. I just stood there, mug growing cold in my hands, lips pressed tight to keep from answering. Julian stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell his skin, warm from sleep, coffee on his breath. He leaned in. Not a kiss. Just a whisper. "Let me give you one night," he said. "No strings. No lies. Just you. Just me." He stepped back before I could respond, like he hadn't just unzipped something inside me. I stood there long after he was gone. Julian didn't bring it up again that morning. He didn't have to. His words followed me all day like a whisper stuck in my chest. "Let me give you one night." Alex was oblivious. He always was. He kissed me on the cheek like muscle memory and left for work without asking how I slept. I stared at the door after it closed, half wishing I had the courage to follow him, stop him, tell him I was slipping. But I didn't. By afternoon, the house was quiet. Cole and Julian had gone out for lunch. I used the time to clean, organize, avoid. But nothing scrubbed Julian out of my head. Not the vacuum. Not the lemon-scented wipes. Not even guilt. He saw me. That night after dinner, Cole crashed early. Julian didn't. He waited. He knew. I found him downstairs, sitting in the dark kitchen, sipping wine like it was a casual habit and not a lure. "You always drink alone in the dark?" I asked. "Only when I'm trying to look mysterious," he said, grinning. "Is it working?" I laughed, folding my arms. "I thought we weren't talking about that. I'm not the one who came looking." That stopped me cold. Because he was right. I could have stayed upstairs. I could have crawled into bed next to Alex and let this thing fade into fantasy. Instead, I stood in the glow of the refrigerator light, watching Julian drink from my glass, his lips on the same rim I'd used earlier. "I haven't done anything wrong," I said, mostly to myself. "You haven't done anything honest either," he replied, quietly. "You're not happy. That's not a crime. But pretending you are? That's the slowest kind of suicide." I sat down across from him, heart hammering against my ribs. "It's not that simple. Of course it's not. If it were simple, I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be looking at me like I'm the first man who's touched you in years. You haven't touched me." Julian leaned forward. "Not yet." Silence settled thick between us. The kind that tastes like anticipation. "I used to believe that loyalty meant suffering in silence," I said. "That being faithful meant staying still no matter how cold it got." "And now?" he asked. "Now I'm just tired of being the only one shivering." Julian's eyes softened. "You're allowed to want more, Damian. You're allowed to want to be wanted." He reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. It was the smallest touch, but my whole body reacted like it had been jolted awake. "Do you love him?" he asked. I opened my mouth, closed it, thought about our last kiss, our last time in bed, the way Alex flinched when I reached for his hand in public, the distance that had grown like mold across every corner of our life together. "I think I did," I whispered. "But I don't know if I still do. Or if I just love the memory of who we were." Julian didn't respond. He didn't need to. Instead, he slid a folded piece of paper across the table. I hesitated before opening it. One line, in his handwriting. "Tonight, if you want to forget everything but us, come to me." I looked up. He was already gone. Upstairs, Alex was in bed, eyes glued to his phone. He didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't notice the way my hands shook as I undressed. Didn't reach for me when I slipped under the covers. I stared at the ceiling again. But this time there was no loop, just a single choice. Go. Or stay. The house was still when I stepped into the hallway. Barefoot. Shirtless. Heart pounding. I paused at the guest room door, hand hovering over the knob. A part of me screamed to turn back. To be good. To stay loyal to a relationship that no longer felt like home. But another voice, softer, more honest, whispered something else entirely. "You deserve to feel something again." I turned the knob. Julian stood on the other side, shirtless, eyes wide like he hadn't believed I'd actually come. We didn't speak. He stepped back. I stepped in. He didn't ask if I was sure. He just pulled me in, and closed the door behind us. Julian didn't rush me. He just looked at me like I was a question he'd already decided to answer. The room smelled like cedar and cologne. The lamp cast soft amber light across his bare chest, and in that moment I understood what it meant to feel seen. Not just noticed, but known. "I thought you might stay upstairs," he said, voice low, laced with something between relief and hunger. "I almost did. What changed your mind?" I stepped closer, pulse pounding in my throat. I stopped pretending I was happy. He didn't say anything to that. He just pulled me in. His hands were warm, confident. When they touched my back, I felt the heat of every buried one I'd tried to smother in my years with Alex. It wasn't just lust. It was permission, to feel, to want, to stop apologizing for needing more than scraps. Julian moved like someone who had already studied me in his mind 100 times. Every graze of his fingertips over my skin was deliberate, reverent. He wasn't rushing to the finish line. He was devouring the moment, me, as I was, as I'd never been touched before. He guided me to the bed, sat me down like I was something fragile and burning all at once. I let him. I let myself. His lips hovered close, waiting, not stealing. "You sure?" he whispered. "No," I said. "But I want this anyway." When he kissed me, it wasn't desperate. It was real. A kind of kiss that said, "I see the holes in you, and I'm not afraid to touch them." My body reacted before my mind could object. All the guilt, all the restraint, it melted under the heat of his mouth. There was no noise from the hallway. No interruptions. Just skin and breath and the soft thud of my heart cracking open. His hands traveled over my body like a cartographer, learning the landscape, memorizing every slope and scar. When he pulled me under him, I didn't feel possessed, I felt offered. Like I had become something sacred, not stolen. For the first time in years, I felt like someone's desire. He didn't speak much. Just soft moans, brief gasps, and my name once, low and reverent like a prayer he wasn't sure he deserved to say out loud. I whispered his back. I didn't cry, but my chest ached with the weight of it all, the years of silence with Alex, the dinners where we talked about work instead of love, the cold spaces between our bodies even when we shared a bed. Julian gave me one night. But in those hours, he gave me back myself. After, we lay tangled in the sheets, quiet, the air thick with what we'd done. "I shouldn't have," I started. "Don't ruin it," he said gently, eyes closed, lips curved into a smile. "You don't owe me shame." "It's not shame," I whispered. "It's confusion." Julian rolled onto his side, brushing my cheek with the back of his hand. "You weren't confused when you came through that door." I looked at him, really looked. He was so different from Alex, wild in his confidence, raw in his honesty. But he hadn't just seduced my body. He'd cracked into the part of me I'd sealed shut. "What happens now?" I asked. Julian shrugged slightly. "You go back. You pretend. Or you don't. But don't lie to yourself, Damian. You cross something tonight. You don't get to be the same man in the morning." A beat passed. My mouth was dry. My body still thrummed from the rush of it all. "I don't know how to go back to him after this." "Then maybe you shouldn't." There was no bitterness in his voice. No pressure. He wasn't trying to claim me. He'd given me exactly what he said he would, one night. But that night had changed everything. I left his room in the early hours, wrapped in a blanket of silence and consequence. Alex was still asleep when I slipped back into bed. He didn't stir. Didn't reach for me. The distance between us was louder than any confession I could have made. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, Julian's breath still on my skin, his voice echoing in my head. "You crossed something tonight. You don't get to be the same man in the morning." And he was right. I wasn't. The morning after, sunlight didn't feel warm. It felt like a spotlight. I sat at the edge of the bed, shirtless, hair tangled, skin still humming with the echo of Julian's touch. Beside me, Alex snored softly, unaware that everything had shifted while he slept. I stared at the gold ring on my finger. It looked heavier than it used to. Downstairs, I heard coffee being made, dishes clinking, laughter, Cole and Julian, probably. Like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't broken something fundamental under the cover of night. When I stepped into the kitchen, Julian met my eyes for a second. No smirk. No flirtation. Just knowing. A soft acknowledgement, quiet and dangerous. "Morning," he said. I nodded. "Morning." Cole offered me a mug. I took it, sipped. My hand was shaking. Alex came down a few minutes later, planting a dry kiss on my cheek like someone checking a box. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah," I lied. Julian didn't look at me again. He didn't need to. The house felt smaller now. Like it couldn't contain the truth we'd buried between sheets. Every smile felt counterfeit. Every word stuck to the roof of my mouth like guilt-drenched honey. Cole left around noon. Julian stayed behind, said he'd call a car later. Alex and I sat in the living room like strangers in an airport lounge. I watched him scroll through his phone, liked how peaceful he looked, detached, unaffected. "You've been quiet," he said. "Just tired." He nodded, didn't ask more. That was the problem. He never asked any more. Julian's footsteps on the stairs broke the silence. He walked past us with his duffel slung over his shoulder, his hoodie zipped to the throat. When he passed behind Alex, he caught my eye again, one last look. It wasn't lust anymore. It was clarity. He saw me for who I really was. And maybe, for a moment, I did too. "Julian's ride's outside," Alex said without looking up. "Guess that's it, huh?" "Guess so." I stood to follow Julian out, under the guise of politeness. But really, I just needed the last word. Or maybe just a last moment. He paused at the door. "You okay?" he asked, not like a friend, but like someone who'd memorized the inside of me. "I don't know." He gave me a sad smile. "That's more honest than most people ever get." I opened the door. He stepped out into the bright, cold air. Before he climbed into the car, he turned back once more. "You'll keep pretending. For a while. You'll tell yourself it was a mistake. But you'll feel it again, that ache. And one day, staying will hurt worse than leaving." Then he was gone. The silence that followed was louder than any goodbye I'd ever known. That night, I sat across from Alex at dinner. Same chairs. Same bland food. Same silence. He chewed methodically. Looked up once. "You're really not talking lately." "I don't think we've talked in months." He blinked. "Is that supposed to mean something?" I set my fork down. "Alex, do you still love me?" He frowned. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." He exhaled, annoyed. "We've been together 6 years, Damian. You don't just walk away from that." "That's not an answer." He rubbed his temples. "Look, maybe we're just going through a phase. It happens. A phase." I laughed hollow. "You haven't touched me in months. You don't ask me how I'm feeling. We sleep like roommates. Is this what love looks like to you?" "Don't be dramatic," he muttered. "We've both been busy. It's just life." "No," I said. "It's not life. It's settling. And I don't want to be asleep in my own relationship anymore." Silence. Then, "Is this about Julian?" My blood went still. He looked at me now, really looked. "You think I didn't see it?" "The way you looked at him." I stared back, throat tight. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't want to hear the answer." That was the closest he'd come to confessing he felt it too, the distance, the decay. Maybe neither of us had been brave enough to say it out loud until now. I stood. "I'm not going to lie anymore, Alex. Not to you. Not to myself." His voice cracked. "Did you sleep with him?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." A long breath escaped him. Not rage. Not betrayal. Just defeat. "I guess that's it then." "No," I said softly. "That was it a long time ago. Last night was just the first time I admitted it." I didn't cry when I packed a bag that night. Neither did he. There was no dramatic ending. No screaming. Just the slow collapse of a house we'd both stopped building long ago. Outside, the wind carried winter's breath. And somewhere in the city, Julian existed like an echo I wasn't sure I'd ever hear again. But as I stepped into the cold, every nerve in my body felt awake for the first time in years. And I knew one thing, without doubt. I wasn't going back.